That's it. Welcome to the podcast. Today I have AKacia Sage, who is a medicine woman, channel, and mentor. And I'm really excited to have this conversation. I was looking through your Instagram and I mean, light language, connecting to earth, connecting to yourself are so many topics that I feel like have really been surfacing a lot lately. And it's a huge part of my journey is just being embodied, right, in yourself. And I'm sure we'll get into that as well. But I'm going to hand you the floor and just introduce yourself, your story, anything sort of like pivotal, I guess, that happened, along the way that kind of got you to where you're at, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Yeah, so I am a channel, a mentor, and medicine woman. And really, the road to where I am now has been so multidimensional and so full spectrum. And it's really interesting because I was tuning in even today. I'm back in Ibiza and I've not been here for 2 years. And I was just really been reflecting, even just in this moment, of where I've even come in these last 2 years. And really, this whole path of coming into my medicine, my leadership, and my embodiment has been deeply through bridging the different realms. So I began really kind of on my spiritual awakening journey very much in the ethereal, like super connected to spirit naturally. I have a lot of Pisces in my chart. Like I'm super up there, like I can be. And so a huge part of my journey like has really been how to anchor this in the body, because at the beginning I was really actually leaving my body to have these incredible experiences, these spiritual, openings, awakenings, deep, deep meditations where you almost, yeah, you disassociate slightly from your body because you're not bringing it into the physical. And so then as I went deeper on my journey, I actually manifested physical disease in my body. And I was diagnosed at one point with 4 chronic diseases. So that was well onto my journey. And it was a really deep lesson. Like it was really deep medicine because I just realized like this physical body is actually what gets me to have this beautiful human experience. And if I'm not connected to that, then I'm not connected to anything, to be honest, because our bodies are a receiving dish for the whole of life, like we are the channels, our physical vessels for life to move through us and for us to really be in our fullest aliveness. So, yeah, that journey with dis-ease really took me deep into the physical body. I had to work through a lot of trauma, release a lot of held trauma from this life and past lives. A lot of it was around separation from myself, from others, from different worlds. Where was I trying to escape from the feelings, the depths, and the darkness, even from this physical life? And as I began to heal this, I really began to understand to a deeper level what my work was with energy healing, with light language, and with leadership. And before then, I had been doing a bit of energy work, like guiding a lot of people with some really beautiful healing. But as I say, there was still this part of me that was thinking that this spiritual experience and any of these spiritual healing practices were something separate from our human experience. And so, yeah, disease showed me that actually it's all the same. We're here to be human. And there's so much magic and beauty in that. And it really got to show me as well these depths of us, these shadow pieces, these wounds and traumas that we move through and experience in our lives. They're not actually blocks. A lot of the time we speak about these blocks or what's stopping us or things that are causing misalignment. And I actually believe that they are aligned because they're here to guide us deeper into our medicine. We find our freedom through our challenges. We find our liberation through going into our fears and really feeling the sensation of them and liberating them through our bodies. And so, yeah, this is what I guide and teach now. It's how to bridge your cosmic and earthly existence, how to be so connected as a channel in your leadership that you're also able to bring this magic and this medicine into the physical world and ultimately know that we are connected so deeply to the earth, to the skies, to absolutely everything in our environments and beyond. And our bodies is actually, they're an expression of that. So literally down to our DNA and our cellular structure, it mirrors the energies and the frequencies and even the grid lines of the earth, we are literally just expressions of the universe. And so when we tap into that, we really get to access our fullest potential. And so that's what I guide and teach people.
Mm. I love that. I'm sort of on the opposite side. I have so much earth in my chart that I've always been so into the material and earthly things that connecting deeper was always felt so far out of reach for me. And I have Jupiter and Pisces. So every time I'd brush up against something, I was like, "Ooh, what's that?" Like it's fascinating to me, but I wasn't, I love hearing stories of people who have been so connected to that side, because that's something that I always kind of struggled with. I just didn't see. I didn't know it was like a reality, so like kind of like the opposite sides of the spectrum. Can we like stop and like click on your first house for a second? Because I pulled up your charts and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh my
including
God.
ascendant and asteroids, it's like 11 placements. It's
It's
wild.
absolutely mad. Like I've been working with astrology for a few years, and
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I still look at my chart and I'm like, what the fuck happened there?
Yeah.
Like what happened there?
Yeah. It's like literally, I mean, it's Pisces and Aquarius in your first house is
Yeah,
huge. And, but the first house is, about the body too, right? So it's like about, I mean, yourself, who you appear to be. But it was fascinating. I saw that. I'm like, I don't know that I've ever seen a first house has basically everything in your first house.
literally. Yeah. And so a huge part of my journey is about, yeah, identity, self,
Mm.
then like the reflection of self and soul, yeah, like self leadership, all of these things. It's like very much this journey of like inner discovery. And interestingly, I actually have gone through so many journeys of identity, even itself. Like even in parts of my journey, I notice where I can identify, like over identify, even with these different aspects of my life, who I am, how I present myself, my name. I actually changed a few years ago from my birth name. All of these parts, yeah, have just continued to come up. And yeah, it does mean that this time of year, like January, February, March, when all of my planets are in this
Mm-hmm.
section of my chart, this time of year is like, whoa,
Yeah.
it's a
And
lot.
and come like next month, I think just in the transits, we're gonna have like 6 planets, 6 or 7 planets in Pisces. So I mean, I feel like I don't know. I feel like anybody who's alive at this time like came for a very specific reason. But when you see things like how much that's going to be impacting like your first house, it's really, I feel like calling you into this moment, right? And I think specifically this year is just huge
Yeah.
for so many reasons.
Yeah, 100%. And then all of the Aquarian energy as well. I've got a stellium in
Mm-hmm.
there as well. So it's like, I've actually really noticed how even just since Pluto shifted into Aquarius, like my mission and my message has just become even deeper within me. It's like this energy, it's obviously internal within me, but it's a response to a greater energy. And that's what so many of us are feeling. It's a feeling of, I know exactly why I'm here. And there is actually nothing that I can do to get in my own way anymore. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that, the clarity and the anchoring is so strong. And I think that's what so many other healers and leaders and mentors are actually feeling right now. And if you're listening to this podcast as well, maybe you feel a pull, maybe you're feeling that calling to step up and discover your gifts and actually understand that that's actually all you need, that pull, that call, and all of it's going to unravel organically because you actually came here for this exact time on earth as we're going through these shifts and these changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so powerful. Sort of going back into your story, was there like a point where you realized, I mean, maybe like was it the illness or the disease that sort of grounded you in your body, or was there something that happened that sort of had you leaning more towards like being in your body?
Yeah, so actually like the disease brought me like back into my body, but I actually began a lot of my healing journey, healing sexuality. And so that brought me like that was the very beginning.
Mm.
So I really started my spiritual journey, like it was kind of catalyzed by some big things that happened in my life. But one of them was healing a very toxic relationship in my life. And I really just began to come back to my body, my own pleasure, and really feeling into like how my body can actually be a portal and a vessel for beautiful sensation. And again, like actually connecting me to other realms, but very much still in my physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the world of Tantra really found me. I trained as a sex coach. I started doing all of these trainings, these teachings, these learnings, and really just diving so deep into that world of the body, connecting to our sensory experience and even finding pleasure in the everyday. So, something that has been so core as well is really allowing your pleasure to become a portal. So, becoming a portal for healing, becoming a portal to your channel, and accessing your voice in deeper ways. And that was a key part. It was understanding that actually pleasure is a portal, but also it doesn't need to be sexual pleasure all the time, right? It can be like daily pleasures. Like drinking my cup of chai latte in the morning is the best thing ever. Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever environment I'm in. I mean, right now it's even better because I have sun on my face in the mornings. But wherever I am, it's how can we connect to these senses? Because this is again what makes us human. It brings us back into the physical. It's this sensory experience we came here to feel. And so how can you bring that into your daily life? And how can you, yeah, welcome in the pleasure in so many ways?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I explored Tantra a little bit. I just read a few books, and I think that the sexuality piece is like a drop in the bigger picture from my understanding. It's very much, but
Massively.
yeah, but I love that it's so much about the body, because I like
Mm.
that I feel like has always been like my purpose is like being in the body. And for me, it's like I said, finding that balance of how can I then explore further past that, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like I'm so grounded, but then it's like I know that
Yeah.
there's more here. I'm like, how do I get there?
Yeah, totally.
But
I love
yeah.
that. And actually, you're so right as well. Like, Tantra is actually about how can we meet the divine in ourselves. And so we can find the divine through our shadows, through our wounds, through absolutely everything, really, because it's about, yeah, finding consciousness in everything, in the oneness. And so Tantra within sexuality is really just one path. It's like one route of that, because how can we find our divinity, find our connection to spirit, and maybe the places that are more taboo in society, because that's where a lot of liberation and healing then occurs for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you familiar with human design? Have you studied it a
A
little
little
bit?
bit. So I know mine quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I'm a 1-3 generator, um, which, yeah, I mean, it's so me. And the
Yeah.
1-3 is, I've really had to learn, how to embrace that, because for me, it shows up in a lot of trial and experiment. Like I learn through life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so even though, I do trainings or like things that really interest me and I love to study as well, it's actually like I learn the most through life. And I remember even at the beginning of my path, even now, to be honest, there are parts of me that find it really hard to be a beginner, because I have this part of me that's like, oh, well, you should have already mastered that, or you should already be there. And that also could be the Pisces coming in, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
Pisces is the 12th sign of the zodiac. So it's kind of this feeling of like being a bit past these lessons, being like, oh, no, I don't want to be a beginner. I don't want to learn this lesson. But yeah, that's the beauty in it. It's actually we learn from mistakes, or we learn from failures, or we learn from steps backwards the most, because we understand how we'll do it differently. And then in that, our own mastery builds.
Mm-hmm. Have you felt like you've always, so I was just looking at your chart. So you are emotional, but have you like felt connected to the sacral in that, like throughout your life? Is there like, can you connect with that feeling?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So I am emotional, but I feel like some decisions, some things are instant bodily response. Like there's actually not much emotion to it. It's like a hard no or a hard yes. Um, yeah, I tune into
Yeah.
that a lot as well. But then there are some decisions where I'm literally in the emotional wave, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I'm a collective emotional as well. So I'm like tuning
Tribal,
into
I
the,
think.
yeah, so I'm like in the collective emotions as well. So I have
Mhm.
to discern what's mine and what's everyone
Yeah.
else's.
Yeah. What has that experience been like for you? Have you always been in tune with your emotions? Like, have you always been able to like sort of wait through that? Or has it been because you have your pressure centers are undefined? And I find I have my root undefined and my solar plexus defined. So I find in my life, I've been super impulsive. Like, I just have felt the pressure to be like, I have to do it. I have to make the decision because everybody wants me to kind of energy, you know? But I'd be curious to see what that experience was for you.
Yeah. So I guess there's kind of two parts of it. There's the feeling I completely resonate with you. I can feel sometimes this external pressure to make a decision quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really had to learn to say, let me sit with this. I'll get back to you. I often can't even say I'll get back to you in 3 days because that again puts pressure on my time limit of when I need
Mm-hmm.
to decide. So I trust that whoever doesn't understand that actually, like, maybe that's not the space for me.
Yeah.
And then also, then there's this part with the emotional side and connecting to my emotions. As an Aquarius moon, as a younger child, I didn't really feel my emotions much. I would kind of disconnect from them a bit. That was part of my conditioning as a child as well. Like feelings in my family household were very much, a sign of weakness. So don't cry, don't be emotional. You need to be strong. And strong means that you actually just hold a central pillar and don't really sway either side much. So too much joy is actually too much. That's hyper and excitable, and that's far too much to handle. And then equally, like deep, deep emotions and crying and lots of tears is also too much. So I kind of learned as a child to really just, shield up really.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when I was tuning into, guiding into my learning journey and my healing, and ultimately then learning more about my human design, is okay, actually, these emotions are really helpful and beautiful and supportive. And the more I can understand them, the more I can understand myself. And so now with the emotional wave in human design, I ultimately know that normally if I'm 80 to 90% a yes, that is a yes. I'm unlikely going to be 100. Sometimes I am 100 and my whole body is like lit up by something. And that's beautiful, but often that's not the case. And sometimes again, it's kind of leaning into this, okay, well, I feel the majority of my energy is here. So I'm going to go for it. And then I'm going to allow the 1-3 to come online and allow it to be an experience and an exploration and more of a discovery rather than a, oh my God, this has got to work now that I've said yes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I think generators in general tend to be a little bit more contractual with things. And I've had quite a few generators that I've been working with that I feel like hold a lot of shame when they start something and can't finish it, you know? And I think that it's honoring that sacral or for you, the emotional experience, like throughout that to be able to feel when something just isn't working anymore. You know, like I'm a manifesting generator, so I will drop things so fast. Like I felt good for a minute, I'm good. But I feel like generators do hold this energy of like, I guess like guilt or shame around not being able to like complete something. So I know
Yeah,
it's really
I totally
interesting.
feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've felt that so much. Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think it's part of our societal conditioning as well, even,
Mm-hmm.
we're taught to, well, even if you look at the 9 to 5 kind of
Yeah.
structure model of work, you would actually commit to something for maybe 40 plus years as a career, as a job. Obviously, we're breaking away from that even collectively, like literally everyone, whether they're doing kind of conscious and spiritual work or not, it's actually completely breaking down. So, yeah, a part of it was that. And also just, I think the key here and what I've learned as a generator is the deeper you trust yourself, the quicker you can drop something if it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel right, because you're no longer projecting like your worth or your validation onto whether you can carry something through, because again, it may no longer be aligned. And actually, if I look back at the timeline of my work, it is constantly evolving. And I began doing Rahani sessions. Rahani is a type of energy healing. It's slightly similar to Reiki because it's hands-on. I started doing that. Then I went into womb healing. Then I went into sexual wellness exploration with that, like coaching. Then I went into deeper embodiment work. Then I went into deeper energy work. Then I went into ceremonial space and plant medicine, and it's just continuing to evolve. And I still pull on the threads of the womb work, for example, or the threads of the tantric embodiment work, or all of these pieces still serve my current medicine. But I've had to just surrender basically to the path and continue, to try and drop things as quickly as I can, as is in alignment, while again, not feeling like I've failed because something doesn't feel right anymore, because that was a key thing that kept me holding on to a lot of things for a while.
Yeah. Well, and I think that third line, if anybody has a third line in their chart, I mean, failure is a huge part of the journey. Like you can't avoid it. I'm a 6'3". So for 30 years, I was absolute
nice.
failure. And I felt so bad about it. Like I was always, I mean, with family, that sort of label of just like, oh, you quit things, you can't see things through. And I just really took that to mean something about me. Right. And that's even something I'm unraveling now, where it's like, that's just who I am. I think as long as I'm honoring and sharing that journey, right? Like now I'm 38. So it's now I'm in that, on the roof phase of that 6 line. So I can still fail, but I have to, as long as I'm sharing it with others, then I feel like the failure, right, that we think is wrong when it's not, is part of the process. And so I think just, I don't know, I think human design is just an incredible, and astrology. And I mean, all these tools, right? It's just so incredible in like that self-realization of, and just kind of like acceptance piece of like who we are. And once we come into that, then it just, I don't know. I think it just gives us like a foundation, right? To like come back to, but.
Totally. Yeah. And actually a piece there is understanding who we are, and then understanding that we are that person to bring medicine to the collective. And so, therefore, sharing our failures, which I will hold up my hand, I do not share my failures very easily. Like, I still find that really challenging. I find that I'm amazing at sharing it in my client spaces, like one-on-one, in my group sessions, like in these closed spaces. And then often, like with social media or wider sharing, although podcasts, I'm actually quite good at really sharing who I am. I think social media for me, like there's been such a journey, and there's just still these little pieces, that don't quite want to be like, oh yeah, completely fucked that up. Because it's like that belief of, okay, well, maybe people won't take me seriously, or maybe people won't want to learn from me because I haven't like nailed it yet, or in that certain area, whatever it is. I'm learning that more and more and more. And in the past 6 months, this has been so much more in my field of, just sharing, being like, this didn't work for me, and here's what I learned from it, instead of, this didn't work for me, and therefore I'm a failure and I should stop sharing who I am.
Yeah. Well, that first line, that conscious first line, holds a lot of insecurity in it, in just like, I think with that failure, right? And it's not that, you're an insecure person, but I think that just that the energy itself, right? So whether it's sharing it and being vulnerable, you need the foundation to feel secure, right? To be able to like step forward. And I think, with podcasts and things like that, there is this one-on-one, like, yes, it is for a broader audience, but the experience of it right now is between, us. Right. And so that makes sense that would be, I guess, easier to be vulnerable and share in that space. And I also like kind of going back to Aquarius, your Aquarius moon. And I've always felt like Aquarius is so interesting. Aquarius is one of the signs that was the hardest for me to understand in my studies, because I was like, I didn't get it. Right. But I think that's the point of it. It's not meant to be understood. But I feel like Aquarius, it's been so deeply embedded in the system that in order to step back and see what's not working, I mean, even emotionally, I think that's why it has to, other than the sign, it's an air sign. So it's intellectual, it's the higher mind, things like that. But I think that if Aquarius was super emotional, it wouldn't be able to stand on the outside and be like firm and be like, this is what's wrong, we have to change, right? It wouldn't be able to be the rebel, right? If it was like so wrapped up in the emotions and the collective, So I think there is a reason why it needs to be a little separated from that aspect of self. But I think that I'm emotional authority. I'm a Leo moon, Leo rising. I have Pluto square my moon. I like everything in my chart. I'm so emotional. I've been so run by my emotions for most of my life. But, in my family, I held so many shadows because nobody in my family was emotional. Nobody understood. I was just like the crazy emotional one. Like everybody had to walk on eggshells around me, and that held a lot of shame too for so long. So then I just like stuffed it all down. So I think that, you know, I feel like the generations now coming up have parents that have experienced what that suppression has done to us, right? And we're kind of tired of it. So I think, it's all part of the process. It's all part of the journey. But I don't know, like my kids are quite emotional and I let them,
Mm.
and I'll hear people sometimes be like, stop crying. And I'm like, just don't listen to them. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And they actually have like a natural, every emotion has a natural cycle. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we can support, I don't have kids, but my friends do. And like actually, if we can support their process and encourage them to release and share, thank you for your voice, thank you for your tears, thank you for all of you, then we allow them to actually become so much more connected and then feel safe in their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And the more someone can feel safe in their emotions, the more they're able to anchor into who they are as a person. Because if we're constantly, again, it's such a habit, isn't it? I've looked after children as well. In my younger years, when I was like a teenager, I used to do a lot of nannying work. And then, yeah, as I said, I've got friends who have kids, and you often find yourself just being like, shh, shh, that's okay. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Shh. And that shh is like
Yeah.
actually telling them to be quiet. And so, how can we be so conscious and actually, again, like allowing imperfections, but also at the same time, be so conscious that we're saying, hey, like it's okay that you're crying. Do you want to tell me? Do you want to tell me how you're feeling? Open up the conversation, allow them to start learning to express. And that's how, we're going to bring this new way of being into being, because we're actually allowing ourselves to be who we really are. And we're feeling beings. We really are, like we're here to feel it all. And so some of us more than others through different charts and aspects. But yeah, it's really beautiful. And actually now what I'm seeing is, my friends who have kids, they have such secure attachments and they're very confident
Mm-hmm.
and they're very sure of themselves. And in those ways, I remember as a kid, like if I was too sure of myself, I'd be told to stop being sure of
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like, don't be full of yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, how can we just, yeah, continue to unravel these
Mm-hmm.
stories, these ways of being, and
Yeah.
just already from a young age, just be in the fullness of us.
Yeah, it's such a confusing message. I used to get that all the time where it was like, speak up. And then I'd speak up, but it's like, but don't say that. It's like, well, what
Yeah.
do you want me to do? So I just shut down. There was a point in my journey where I shut down. I became so shy and so introverted, and I would never speak up. And I'm a Taurus sun and I have Mercury in Taurus. So this is so much about my throat and with Leo, right? My moon and rising. Like I'm here
Mm.
to express myself, I'm here to be seen. And that became so uncomfortable, but I could physically feel it. Like I hated that feeling of being, I literally felt trapped inside my body. It was like I couldn't escape it. But yeah, I mean the messaging is so confusing. And even my daughter, she's 14 and she's has experiences at school. Yesterday she was upset because some eighth graders were calling her ugly, and it's so easy to just be like, well, you're not, you're beautiful, and like move on, right? But like that doesn't validate her experience. It doesn't make anything better. And so I think it's, I don't know, that's why I always tell her, I'm like, the purpose of life is to be daring enough to be yourself and to show up in that way, and it's not easy. It's not, and I know that hurts like hell when people make fun of you, and so I don't know, it's an interesting thing parenting, because it's like your go-to is to react in the way that you were reacted to as a child, and then you have to like kind of stop and be like, no, like what would I have wanted as a child, right? So it's like it's a lot of inner child work essentially, right? But then being able to see them be more themselves, like there are things that she does that I'm like, wow, you're so brave. I never would have done that at your age, and recognizing that and honoring that. And I don't know, it's a beautiful, super challenging, like literally the hardest thing ever, but it's also so beautiful, and there's so much work. It's actually, like somebody said once, that was like being a parent is like one of the most spiritual practices you can do, because it's, if you're, you know, I guess conscious about it. And I mean, even if you're not, it's just it's a whole journey. But anyway.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
It really is. I think it's one of the biggest initiations.
Mm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and being a witness to these different initiation periods in life, like those teenage years. I mean, I can't remember where I read it, but it's like there is this, like, almost like death aspect. It's like this child version of you is dying, and you're not quite this adult version, and it's like this in between area where you're supposed to rebel. You're
Mm.
supposed to be going through all these things. Your hormones are changing, and I think that it's not honored enough in our society to like support children as they're navigating these times. It's just always like, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And it's like, it doesn't serve anything, to
Yeah,
not allow them to have their experiences. But
100%. And I think that's where slightly we've lost our real honoring of the rites of passage that we go through as humans, from children to adults, as women, when we get our first bleed, that's a huge rite of passage, of puberty, then going into menopause, all of these, and then from maiden to mother, all of these, from boy to father and from man to father, all of these are rites of passages, and they actually take a lot. They take a lot of our energy. They take a lot of our presence and understanding of who we are, because like anything is a shedding. It's a shedding of who we thought we were to allow space for who we really are, or who we're becoming in that moment. And how can we support each other more and more and more? And that's where, again, we're seeing more communities rise and build, because, it takes a village. Everyone says it takes a village to raise a child, and truly it does. And I believe even in this Aquarius age, we're going to see fewer schools that are putting kids in lessons that are all the same age, and actually opening up to multiple ages, because actually, if you look back at the tribes, we learn through multi-age, multi-generation teachings. If you look at kids play in the playground beyond school, like in friendship groups and at home, there's multiple ages there, and the older ones are guiding the younger ones, and the younger ones are playing together, and then maybe they're interacting with the much older ones, and all of them are actually forming this very cohesive community, pulling on their skills, their leadership. They'll normally be a leader, and it just naturally happens. But it's not a hierarchical leadership. If you look at how children play, they each have their roles, and they each have a voice in that space. And it's really beautiful to witness. So I think actually schools, when we're coming into this age, and it's going to continue to ripple out into the mainstream, I hope, and it will eventually. It might take time, but yeah, we're going to be able to see that more and more, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And just watching kids go through like all these years with the same people, like,
Mm.
and yeah, it's such an interesting thing. And I do hope to see that all shift and change. And just, I mean, the school system, that's what I always tell my kids. I'm like, as long as you're trying, like, I'm not gonna be mad if you don't pass something, because the system's not built. And I wish that I could homeschool or send them to like a Waldorf school or something like that. It's just in the moment not part of my current experience, but you just have to do what you have to do, I guess.
Mm.
But sort of, going back to what you do and how you support people, when you were, going through your sort of like embodiment experience and coming into yourself, was there any like specific practices that you found supportive, or that you kind of like leaned on as you were going through that?
Yeah, so actually, like most of these are super simple.
Mm.
So I tried breath work for a while, and I did enjoy it, but sometimes I would find that there was so much air, like in my body. And I'm naturally, like, I can naturally feel ungrounded, because I have so much air within me anyway. Even Ayurvedically, I'm a Vata, so I have so much air. And so I was doing a lot of breath work, and while it was bringing me into my body in terms of releasing a lot of stored trauma, it wasn't grounding me and earthing me. So I began sort of bringing in other practices. And honestly, one of the main ones, two of the main ones, I would say, and the most simple, is dance. intuitive dance. So not any kind of style, nothing, not even, you know, yeah, just literally listening to my body and how it wanted to move. So sometimes it would be with music and sometimes it wasn't even with music. And I still do this, a regular dance. So yeah, just getting into the body through dance. And then at the very beginning, and I still do this as well, although not every single evening, it's just a gentle body massage. Self massage is the most nourishing thing because we're connecting to our body, we're learning to accept every part of our body, and we're just feeling that touch, us. And it creates a really deep safety because it's like, I've got me. I've got my physical vessel right now. I can give myself comfort if I need it. I can ground my body if I need it. And even now, if I feel like I'm feeling overwhelmed or feel like I need an extra grounding, I'll always just place my hands on my body somewhere that it feels nourishing and it brings me straight back. And so, yeah, I believe if we can bring in these practices, they're so simple. Sometimes it can feel like a bit of an edge, especially if the self message, like if you feel like you've got a lot of challenges with body image and your connection to your body and how you really view it, it can feel like an edge, but allow that to be a healing experience because, again, your body, your soul chose your body. And my journey with my body hasn't always been easy as well. I remember as a young woman, like actually for most of my life, my body has been sexualized a lot because categorically it was a body that was, seen as desirable through the media. This is literally a made up story by the media and society. And so I found it so challenging to just accept like my body as mine and not think that it was for someone else. And this was a huge story to unravel, but also because I felt so much shame that that was my story and that it wasn't the story of, oh, I'm feeling like I'm overweight or I can't accept my body because it doesn't look like the media, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting because I felt like so much shame around that. And I barely spoke to my female friends about it because I was like, I cannot share this because most people are sharing the opposite, let's say, because the body acceptance movement and the body love movement is mostly around accepting your body if it's not the typical like thing that we see in the magazines. And then my journey was complete opposite. It was like, how can I accept my body for my own and not see it as an object for someone else's desire or see it as this projected thing that actually is, for someone else's gaze. So it was this really, really deep journey. And yeah, every soul chose their body. There's a reason why we all chose this body to be in. I believe there was a reason why I chose this body to be in, and then share a lot of the tantric work, a lot of the sexuality work that I was doing, a lot of the womb work that I still do. There's a reason, I had to go on that journey. I had to really accept who I am in this physical being and this body. So yeah, those are the two probably most easy, like accessible ones. And then also just self-pleasure rituals, and they don't have to be deeply sexual as well, but just bringing pleasure into your body. You can follow guided practices of, I do a lot of wand work, with crystal wands, de-armoring, womb work, all of these different things, breast massage, so healing for connecting to your heart and really opening that energy center as well. Because the heart is not only about receiving, it's also about giving. So the more you're in your heart, you're actually bringing to the world who you are at the same time as feeling safe to receive from the world.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are some of the practices that have been, yeah, so supportive and still support me. It's a constant practice because each layer brings us deeper.
Yeah. And I think just something that you said too, I think this is something that we as women need to do a lot of work around where we need to include everybody in things. I think that it's easy to look at somebody and have your own issue. Like we're always looking outside of ourselves, right? Sort of like you said, like your body versus the body love movement, which is more for, larger women or where it's like, why are you not included in that? I think that we all need to be loving our body regardless of what it looks like or what other people perceive it to be,
Mm.
And I think that it's easy to, I don't know, look at somebody else and be like, well, you have it better than me. Right.
Mm.
Or you perceive it to be that way. Right. But it needs to be more about just everybody in their experience, period.
Yeah, that's the thing. And it's like with absolutely everything, how can we release the stories, the
Mm-hmm.
stories of shoulds and the stories of how we think, other people are perceiving us, and how can we actually just accept that everyone, regardless of the narrative outside of us, regardless of the societal expectations, everyone will have something like wrapped up within that.
Yeah.
And so everyone needs to be in that space for healing and to be included. And actually, the more everyone is, the more as women we're able to see our sisters and be like, I don't resonate with your experience, but your experience is welcome,
Mm-hmm.
and allow the space for all of us to be heard, to be held in that space of healing.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love too is I feel like of all the people I've spoken to on the podcast that are in alignment and have achieved success relative to what their perception is or anything, there's always like the tools along the way are so easy. Well, okay, they're simple. I won't say they're easy, right? But it's
That's
like,
simple.
yeah, but it's for some reason it's so challenging for us to actually implement them, right? Like along the journey. So like I guess what or how did you make that become a practice that then sort of transformed things for you?
That's a really good question. So I would say probably at the beginning, I was doing it from a pressure point of view. I was like, I've got to do this. Like, and that didn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. Pressure just doesn't
Yeah.
motivate me at all. If anything, it kind of shuts me down. So yeah, I definitely moved through that. And I definitely have found consistency challenging as well. But ultimately, I'm not a very consistent being, like in my energy. And so, again, like coming into acceptance with that. But there are some solid practices that I've managed to just stick to. And like my morning practice, for example, is just I wake up, I make my herbal tea, and I sit by my altar every single morning, like bar probably 2 mornings a month because I have to get an early train somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I built that was because of what happened when I didn't do that. So it was, and I was reading in a book this morning, actually, like we're often motivated by the situation that would happen if we didn't do those things rather than the pleasure that would happen if we did, because we're actually, as human beings, we're wired to avoid pain more than we are to go towards pleasure. It's literally just our survival instincts as primal beings. So I began to see that and this was at the very beginning, when I was actually super sensitive, I was healing a lot of trauma, like my whole nervous system was extremely, extremely sensitive. So if I did miss a morning practice, I would really feel it in the day. I would be very reactive. I would like just be super, super emotional, not really be able to like navigate the day, I'd just get very overwhelmed. And so those early stages, I was really seeing that, okay, if I can give myself half an hour to an hour of stillness, whatever I need in that moment. So my morning practice also isn't rigid. Some people's are, but either I meditate or I journal or I move my body or I breathe. Sometimes I literally just sit at my altar and I just look at it. Honestly, I just sit in stillness and I just clear my mind of thoughts. I guess that's a type of meditation, but it's not a specific one. And sometimes I do card pulls, whatever it is, but it's following my intuition, but it's also keeping to that structure in that sense. And so I would say if anyone wants to build something like that they know is going to support them, start small. Like don't start, if you find it really challenging, don't start with an hour's practice. For me, that was what was perfect because it was like the length of time that really dropped me in. And I again, yeah, I began to see that when I dropped in for that time, then my day would run a lot more smoothly. Now my nervous system is far more capable and has a much wider capacity for emotion and things in the day. So I can miss a morning practice and I'll feel exactly the same. However, probably if I missed a morning practice for 2 weeks and was out of schedule and was on someone else's schedule, maybe I was on holiday with a group of people, I wasn't listening to myself, I wasn't listening to what my body needed, maybe I wasn't taking time away from the group, all of these things, I would start to feel like I was like not listening to my energy, and my energy would feel a bit off. I'd often feel a bit drained. So that would be a nudge again, like come back to your simple practices.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're starting off and you want to start something, yeah, start for 10 minutes and do something that feels nourishing and good. You know, don't do someone that someone's told you to do. So much of the time with these daily practices, it's like someone will be out there and be like, oh, this 10-minute meditation is the best, or this yoga practice is the best. Just listen to what you want. That could just be a really intentional, long, slow shower. Like it could be a really beautiful cup of tea in the morning, still in bed, and you connecting to your senses already. But what I would say is anything that connects you and grounds you into the body is really supportive, I believe, because it's allowing your nervous system to already anchor and to welcome in the day. And from that space, you're going to feel a lot more able to, navigate your day and meet the things that arise, because naturally, you know, things unexpected happen most days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that practice of whatever it looks like for you to come into your body will then align you to, like you said, when you're, say, you go a week or two, you're more in tune with your body to understand when it's needing something or when it's feeling out of alignment. And I think that's
Yeah.
that's powerful. And with the third line, I think it's always, trying
Yeah.
like for me, I will try everything just to see what fits, right? And I know that's not everybody is like that, but that's part of the piece of myself that I actually do love, is like I will try everything, and
That's literally it.
yeah, for
Yeah.
me,
And it,
sometimes it's harder to make one consistent because I just I'm pulled in so many different directions. But I think, yeah, that getting in tune with yourself.
yeah, totally. And actually, an example of this is recently I was on a retreat and there was a morning yoga practice with the group every single morning, and it started quite early. So I personally don't connect to yoga. I don't like it. My body doesn't like being told how to move.
Mm.
I like, other practices that get me into my body. So I went the first, I think, 2 mornings, maybe it was only the one morning, and I could just feel this like resistance. And I was like, I don't actually want to start my day like this. Um, and I remember the part of me, the kind of a people pleaser is like, well, you've got to, because that's what the group's doing and that's what everyone's doing here. And actually, what really helped was going to the space holder for the yoga part and just be like, look, I'm not gonna keep coming. I'm gonna use this hour for myself and just ground in each morning. And oh my goodness, it shifted so much, because then I had a full hour just to myself to do my own practice. And I felt so ready for the day and I felt so connected to myself. And it was just really beautiful. And probably years ago, that would have been so hard for me to do, because it would be using my voice saying that I don't really like yoga when the whole group loved it, and feeling like I was actually, separating myself from the group again. And I hadn't wanted that to be the intention. But actually, again, the more we get to know our bodies, the more we get to know ourselves and how we work, we can start honoring that and listening. It's not to say, like you're going to step out of every single group situation that doesn't feel 100%, because obviously things in life, like sometimes we have to lean into our edge, sometimes we've got
Mm.
to just commit,
Mm-hmm.
but it's about finding that balance. And so, yeah, for me, that was an example of where I really was able to listen to what I needed.
Yeah, I love that. Honoring yourself, even when it's hard to be the one that's kind of doing things differently. But something else that you just said at the end, like, how do you, I guess, like you specifically, or how do you support people if this is part of, what you work with people with? But like, how do you know when to lean into that and then when to pull back? Like, is there something in your body that tells you, like, now, let's explore this more, or let's step back?
Yeah, so I would say it's not so black and white. I would say go into an inquiry and see what part of you. So I do a lot of part work with my clients, and it's what's the story underneath that part. And often, you know, it's hard to tell, every single situation is different. I mean, I know for me that if something is an edge, my mind will be very busy of the reasons why I don't want to do it. So it's more of a mind thing, even though it's felt in as sensation in my body, it's like finding reasons why I can't do it. So it's like, oh, maybe I'm busy, or maybe I can't fly back for that event in time, or, whatever the story is. That would probably be an edge for me to lean into. And then also, if I were to imagine me going into that space, does it bring up fear in my body? If there's fear, I'll actually lean in, because that shows me that there's growth there. Like, it's obviously like my heart is beating if I see myself in that space. Whereas if it's not for me, then my mind won't really be that busy. I'll just be like, I actually don't want to do it. I don't want to be in that space. And my body, my heart won't be beating. It won't be like an anticipatory energy. It will just be more of a very mellow, neutral feeling of like, oh, that just doesn't light me up. I don't really want to be there. So that's how I tell. But again, yeah, it's very nuanced, and it really depends. I think as well, it really depends, because if we're early on our embodiment journey and we don't have a very deep connection to our body, fear and intuition can get really mixed up. And so sometimes we can be like, oh no, my intuition told me not to. And actually that was fear, being just because there was fear there, because there's obviously some kind of maybe trauma or a healing that hasn't quite cleared. And that's just our body's way of signaling that. So yeah.
Yeah, that self-exploration is so important to really discern in there. So you also do like earth activations. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's actually one of the reasons I'm in Ibiza right now. So yeah, this kind of came through me probably this time last year, really, when I was in Bali, and it's very connected to the waters as well. So I get called to certain lands, and then the waters start speaking through my channel. And then they bring me to certain points on the land, and I will go to those places and channel the energy through me. So it's like, as the channel, I'm activating the earth, but the earth is also sending me activations and medicine to then bring through in different teachings and transmissions. So the energy itself transmutes and shifts into then words and wisdom and light language that then is shared with my clients and community beyond. And then the other way is, if I am a channel and a vessel as a light, and I've kind of go into this space of channeling and I'm this pillar of light, then I'm bringing new energy into the earth, and through activating the earth, it sends out ripples into the grid system as well as the wider collective. So a lot of us have this assignment at the moment. If you look into Matthias de Stefano's work, he's speaking a lot into it as well. He speaks really beautifully into it. But essentially, yeah, what it is these earth activations, they have specific coding, specific callings for us as leaders. And it's part of our mission to really listen to that call, to understand where it's coming through, and to bring it and share it as a transmission to the wider collective as healing medicine. So, for example, like let's say I get called to a certain point here on the island, then from that activation, it may be that other people then in the area are like, oh, I'm going to go and meditate on that rock. And from meditating on that rock, they receive other activations because the earth has begun to activate. So if we begin to see the earth, ourselves as just, and the wider cosmos, as this interconnected grid, we're working with all of these different grid systems, these webs that interconnect us between realms, but also between continents, countries, oceans. all of these different things. So the way that's more of the earth, and then the way the water connects to it is the water is through our channels. It's the way she speaks, she sings through us. And the water is our womb wisdom as well. So as women, we're very connected to the waters of the earth, and especially in the tides and the moons and the cyclical living that we are a part of. So this is a key part as well as awakening. There's a huge awakening of the feminine right now, which is so key as well to help awaken the masculine. We're going through a dual awakening right now. So yeah, working with both the earth, which is more masculine, the strong pillar, the structure, and then the feminine, the waters, the flow, the intuition, like blending those two as frequencies and energetics brings an awakening for the collective as well as ourselves, and directly in the gifts that we're bringing forward.
That's beautiful. Are these like ley lines that you're being called to, or is that something completely separate?
So some people do work with the ley lines. I don't personally. I genuinely don't even look at the ley line map. It's probably very unconventional of me. Naturally, I'm Aquarius. Like,
Yeah.
if anyone had a rule book on how to do it, like I would not be doing it. Like, not even as a thing of, oh, I'm not going to do what other people do. I just naturally follow whatever's true for me, you know. So yeah, a lot of people do work with the specific ley lines. I just really listen to my intuition and where I'm called. So at the moment, I've been to Bali, Egypt, and now Ibiza working with these lines. I did actually kind of organically, without really realizing, the first time I came to Ibiza, I was already beginning to see these codes come online, because this is the space where my light language first came online, just living on this rock. So even that, it's like listening to the earth and receiving as the channel what gifts want to come through to then be of greater service to the collective and to your clients. But yeah, so I just get intuitively called, and often these places are by water for me, but they might not be for other people. They're often on, if you were to look at the ley lines and the active energetic sites that are mapped out, you know, Ibiza, Bali, Egypt are massive energetic points, but who knows where I'll get called to next. You know, it could be somewhere completely off the typical map that anyone has mapped before, and that's a new activation point. So
yeah, there's definitely something powerful there. I've never been. I lived in Madrid for a couple years, but I never like went traveling around Spain. I don't know why. I should have. But I mean, but human design was downloaded there, the whole human design system. So yeah, it's really cool. How do you get called to these places? Is this just like in meditation, it's coming through, or is there like something specific that calls you?
Yeah, so normally it's when I'm channeling. So I have a practice of channeling, and I just drop into my channel. I I was going to say like how frequently I do it, but I didn't even have really a structure. You know, some days, I mean, sometimes I'm literally in my channel for like a week, and I'm just in this kind of portal of almost like osmosis of just receiving constant energies and downloads. And my journal is just like a constant scribbling page, because a lot of the things want to be written.
Yeah.
Other times it will be like a drop in of maybe an hour, let's say. And again, I just feel into my intuition, and I don't force that. I just listen. But yeah, I just, through dropping into my channel, I just receive the messages. So it'll be like, you will go here, or you will go here at this time, or I get shown dates or numbers in my mind. So for example, I knew I was coming to Ibiza, but I didn't really know when. And then 11 just kept coming up. 11 just kept coming up. So I booked my flight on the 11th. So it's like these are little things. And this is what I teach people as well, is how to open to this, you know, how to become the channel, how to just be in open reciprocity of these energies and these communications that want to come through us, and how to then respond. So yeah, that's how I receive the messages. And then as a generator, I do use, you know, my response system. So sometimes then in my external environment, suddenly everything is, you know, everyone around me is talking about a certain place. So that sometimes is then a nudge for me then when I'm next in my channel. I can be like, what should I do about this place? And either they'll be like, oh, you don't need to go here, you're just receiving some energy from that place right now. Or it's like, yeah, you'll go here next month. So that provides more clarity as well.
Mm, I love that. Yeah. And, in human design, the whole sacral, like to respond, they talk about how it does need to come from an external source, right? And not so much from inside of you. So I love that you kind of brought that in, that does happen. Like the universe will then like bring things to you. What was your process of just like trusting that? Because I think a lot of people receive downloads or receive messages, but then just, talk themselves out of believing that it was something deeper, or, and then I guess like kind of on top of that, which you sort of answered, but like when you receive like a message, is it just sort of like everything begins to line up to get you there, or like you have to like take action based on what came through?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second bit first. So I have to take aligned action.
Mm.
Like I could just sit in the UK at home and do nothing. I
Mm-hmm.
could ignore it. So my flight doesn't get booked for me, or not that that would happen anyway.
Yeah.
But it's not like I receive a call and then, although actually, to be fair, that did happen. I was going to say it's not. It's not. I was going to say it's not like I receive a call and then someone from that country just texts me to say there's an accommodation free. But that genuinely did just happen with Ibiza, because I was in Bali in December, and I think I was just like listening, like tuning in, and Ibiza just came through, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I've not been for 2 years. I wonder why that's coming back through. So with that, that's already an opening, right? So my awareness is already open. So I consciously will be like, okay, continue to send me Ibiza if it's right, for example, or show me signs for Ibiza if it's right. And the signs can be completely abstract. So it's not that you then need to have a conversation organically with 3 other people about Ibiza, that they just bring it up in a conversation. It could be, I often use animals as my signals. So sometimes it's like, send me 3 swans in the next 3 days to show me that I need to go to Ibiza. And if I see 1 swan, I don't go. If I see 2 swans, I don't go. If I see 3 swans, I'll be like, okay, I know I need to go. And it's within the 3 days. So I'll set myself, like I set the boundaries consciously when I'm like speaking with my guides and like connecting with them. And it's really easy to slightly bend it. And this is where like our minds can slightly get in the way. So when I was living in Bali, like last year, I really wanted to adopt a puppy. And I asked for a sign, and I was getting near signs. And I was like, oh, maybe it's just it. Like, maybe I just get it anyway. Maybe I just get the puppy anyway. And then, like 3 weeks after that, like I had a whole, I had a motorbike accident. My whole plans flipped on its head, and I had to fly back to the UK. Thank goodness I didn't get that puppy. Life obviously knew what was coming. I didn't at that time. And if I had ignored the fact that I hadn't seen the full signs, like I would have had this puppy to somehow then rehome and rehouse. Like that wouldn't have been a good situation. So that's another thing about trusting, is how do you trust the signs? Well, you ask for the signs, first of all. When I'm in my channel, it's not so much about signs, it's literally just direct messages. Sometimes I get shown visions. And then it's also sensory feelings. So how would I know if it's really real and it's not just something that I've made up or it's in my imagination? Often I just get sensations through my body. So sometimes, even just in conversation, sometimes my whole body will shiver, like the full body shivers. And that's a confirmation for me. Like that's a signal of confirmation. Sometimes I get that in my channeling. Like I'll receive a message and then my whole body will like feel sensation. I'll be like, oh, whoa, okay, that was on point. And then, yeah, some things are just, I think there's just a difference between knowing and then thinking. And when you get really tuned, and it is a practice, like when I began channeling, again, I weaved it into this morning practice that I had built for myself. So the first time I started connecting to my channel, I set myself a challenge of 30 days. Every single day I would connect, and I would keep connecting, like beyond that. So then once I'd built that practice, I was like, I know that this is real, because I'm receiving messages and signs. And then sometimes I'd ask them for a sign, before it happened. And then when it did happen, that was again confirmation. So it's about bridging. It's like bridging of the messages into the physical. And then when you see the physical, that's again confirmation. And over time, the more and more confirmation you're getting through your body feelings, your external environment responding to all of these different things that literally would be impossible to have known, that's when you just begin to trust, and you're just like, wow, there is a greater intelligence at work. I am tapped into it. I believe anyone can channel, like literally anyone. You've just got to learn how to do it and then practice.
Yeah.
And it's like anything, like the deeper you go, the deeper you go, the more you ask, the more you receive. So yeah, it's all a practice, but yeah, everyone can do it.
Yeah, being consistent with it. I've definitely gotten to those states where I've channeled, and I don't do it often enough. I know that, because I love being in it. It feels like really good. But then I don't know, then I forget about it. I don't know. But it takes intention to like set the space and drop into it and then allow it to come through. And like you said, trust. I think that sometimes that's the hardest thing. We get so caught up in our minds that it's so easy to, like you said, that example with the puppy. It's like, well, it's almost there. Like, let's just see it as that, but it's like, no, it's just because you're not getting what you want doesn't mean the universe doesn't know what's happening or what's coming. So it's that surrender.
Yeah. And that I love that you brought in surrender. That is like the absolute key to channeling. It's like, even if you go in, like, even if I go into a channeling practice with an intention to find out an answer about something, often I won't actually receive that, because I've gone in with a preconceived idea of like what I want clarity on and what I want answers on. And often it's the things that we don't know are there. And it's not conscious. It's when we tap into, it's not in our conscious minds. And then we tap in and we receive what we actually needed. And then we see that thing abstractly connects to the thing we wanted to know. But it's that step-by-step process. So yeah, surrender is absolutely key. Releasing all expectation, releasing every kind of attachment, identity that we formed, even as a channel. I go in as just a clear, open vessel every time. I'm not like, I am all knowing, I know everything. It's like I go in with this humble openness. It's like this innocence every time, because it's allowing everything that's meant to then come through without me getting in the way of anything.
I love that. Is there anything that you want to bring to the conversation that we maybe didn't touch on?
No, I don't think so. I think like we've touched on so many things. I think, I mean, the last thing that I'll leave is really just anyone can channel. And I really think that whether, whatever work you're doing right now, whether you're listening to this and you are a leader already, or whether you feel like that leadership is coming through you and you want to step in more, I really believe we're all meant to be connecting to our channels more and more, because this is how we bring through even more of our medicine. It's like bridging the cosmic to the earthly, and everyone can do it. And so it's so easy, as you say, we're talking about building a practice, it could be easy for anyone to be like, oh, I'm going to read my book tonight, or I'm going to watch Netflix, or I'm going to do something else. Whereas if we start building these practices of connecting to our channels, our inner wisdom, our connection to this whole grid system that we live within, this web of life, I call it the pulse of life. It's like this wider intelligence that is just connecting all of us, and it has just this subtle pulse. And when we're in our channels, we're actually so tuned into this, and we begin to feel it in our bodies, and our whole energy body's open, and we feel more sensation, more pleasure, more aliveness. And this really is the key to our leadership. How can we become the open vessels for sensation, aliveness, and our openness? and our eros, in that's our erotic expression as well, not just sexual, but our actual connection to life itself, our life force. And from there, if we're leading from that space, wow, I mean, the possibilities are endless because we're just this pure field and void of potentiality rather than holding on to attachments, identities, structures, or ways of being that may feel more habitual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. How can people work with you and how can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Earth Whispers ____. And to work with me right now is to be in one of my trainings. So the next one is in Egypt. It's in April. And this is, wow, such a powerful training. It's an 8-day immersion with 6 months online. And it's allowing you to activate and step into your leadership, your unique blueprint of leadership through your channel, your voice, and your eros. So we go deep into these portals, your channel, of course, being your connection to the spirit realms, but also everything in the unseen. These earth activations come in, and then your eros being your life force, your sexual energy, as well as your pleasure, your aliveness. When you open to that, again, your leadership comes online so much more fully because you're becoming the transmission of your medicine itself. You're walking effortlessly into that. And then your voice, we can't step into our leadership unless our voice is activated. So going into all of the spaces, maybe our voice hasn't been heard, and actually opening to the fullness of that. So yeah, this is the training. It's the most beautiful thing. I am so beyond excited for it. And yeah, it's so acquired as well. The best thing about it is that it's not a modality, it's not teaching you a step-by-step structure. It's allowing you to open to the vast expanse of your own medicine and leadership. And in that, you will feel deeply anchored, deeply confident, and deeply embodied in your own power and your medicine as a leader.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so
thank
much
you.
for being here and for sharing everything with the audience.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so beautiful to
Yes.
connect. And I love all the weavings, like with the astrology and human design. It's
Mm.
so good to connect in that way.
Yeah, I can't like see things without it. It's just like part of the way my my perception, I guess my mind works. But yeah, I love it. Thank you so much.